All right. Hey, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Restored Mind Show. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about managing ourselves, or how to best manage ourselves during this time of uncertainty. And so for those of you that don't know me, my name's Matt Codde, and I just want to welcome you to the show. And on this episode, again, I'm going to cover three things that I think can help us manage ourselves as individuals, because and the first thing that I want to talk about today is just this idea of preventing overwhelm. Now, one of the big problems, and again, this is obviously part of our series on the coronavirus pandemic that's currently kind of unfolding in front of us, and as we're heading in to these next weeks, the reports is that this is when we're expecting anyway the virus to kind of spike, right? And for things to kind of reach, in every pandemic, right, there's this bell curve that happens where, you're going to reach a certain peak, and then once it peaks, then it starts to come back down. And as we head into this time, it can be very overwhelming, especially when you look at the problem from a global and societal perspective, right? A lot of people are, very concerned about all sorts of things, the economy and the fallout and what's going to happen and this and that, and rightfully so to a degree, right? But when we talk about this pandemic, the thing is if we focus on things that are beyond our control, this whole situation is going to seem very, very overwhelming, and essentially can get to the point where it paralyzes us as individuals. And what we need to remember is that we, as a society, as a family, as communities, are made up of individuals. And how we handle this as individuals is ultimately going to determine how we handle it as families, and how we handle it as communities, and how we handle it as organizations, and as counties and states and countries, and essentially as an entire population. And to help us as individuals prevent overwhelm, I want to kind of talk about a few points. And so it's real easy to get caught into being overwhelmed, and one of the reasons that is because we look at the problem from a perspective that is unmanageable for us, right? And we look at it from a global and societal perspective. And for most of us, that's not something we have control over, and so essentially it's not something that we should be putting a bunch of focus into. Instead, what we should be looking at is, look, how can I manage myself? Trusting that if we all focus on managing ourselves well, and we all actually put that work into managing ourselves instead of trying to solve everyone's problems. Well, focusing on ourselves is a manageable thing, right? We can choose how to focus on ourselves today and tomorrow and the next day as we go through this time together. Right. And if we focus on ourselves and manage ourselves as individuals, and then, even as families, right, our family units, that is what's going to help us as a community, a society, a state, a country, and as a global, population get through this pandemic, right? So when I talk about preventing overwhelm, what I'm really talking about is preventing overwhelm within yourself, okay? And the only thing that for most of us that we should be worrying about is how to get through today. And look, there are people that are in charge of, administrations and countries and leadership, and they're focusing with a lot of people on how to help the masses. But for the overwhelming majority of us, all we really need to focus on is managing ourselves to the best of our ability through this time, because that's all we have control over. Right? There's so much that's just completely out of our control. And when we try to control that or attempt to worry about that, we can get consumed by it, right? To the point where we don't manage it. It creates an internal chaos within us. And that's for the most part with anxiety. What the problem is, right, is we try to control something we can't control, right? Or we want to be sure about something we can't be certain about. And we try to solve things externally to resolve the internal, right? And what I'm proposing is to prevent overwhelm, focus on managing yourself as an individual well before you focus on managing anything else, right? Because if you aren't okay internally, right, and you're in a complete state of panic and fear and paralyzed, you're not going to help the situation, right? You're most likely going to, cause more disruption. But when we can manage ourselves well, and we can even go into helping manage our family members well and helping them manage it well, and we can work from the inside out, that's going to help the overall, us as a whole, as people go through this, right? And so that's just the first thing, is just when you're talking about managing yourself, just preventing yourself as individuals from getting consumed with overwhelm. Point number 2 is I want to talk about is this idea of building perseverance. Now, this may sound kind of crazy, but the reality is that problems we face in life can produce good things in the long run. Now, just to name a few, problems can produce perseverance, they can produce growth, they can produce maturity, and they can also produce innovation. And choosing to believe that something good will come of this, right? However long that might be, we don't know, right? But something good can and will come of this. On an individual level, from a societal level, from a global level, whatever that is, whether you become stronger and more you develop more perseverance, you develop growth, you develop maturity, all that stuff as individuals is great. But as a society, we're being forced to innovate, right, in many different areas. And in this problem, and innovation is generally a result of a problem occurring, right? It's kind of something that we're forced into, right? And trusting that those things can be very positive in the long term, and hoping and putting your faith in the positive aspects of that, as opposed to always looking at the potential negatives, right? And that's really the third point I want to go into today, is just the idea of choosing your focus and choosing how you're thinking. And what I mean by that is not necessarily, you can't always choose the thoughts that pop in your head, but you can choose which ones to feed and which ones to stoke on, right? And which ones you want to spend your time kind of feeding and entertaining. And having trust that in the long term, good can come from this on many levels, as an individual, as a family, as communities, as organizations, as states and countries and globe, right? I know I keep repeating that, but that's really how we have to work at this, right? As we have to start as individuals, because what you do matters, right? What you do just with you matters, because you will have a ripple effect on the people that you are close with, right? So in your family unit, if you are managing yourself well, that's going to promote the idea of other people managing themselves well, right? And then if the families can manage themselves well, and we can move into the other families that we're in contact with, or the other families that we're close with, and then extended families, and then, little communities and schools and all that, right? I mean, it can be a ripple effect, right? On both ends. It can be, if you are panicking and overwhelmed, that can be a ripple effect too. You can cause overwhelm in other people as well. And ultimately, it's just like, we have to manage ourselves, right? And that's why, with this particular episode, I want to just talk about just managing myself during the crisis, because if we can shift our focus to that, well, that's something that we actually are in control over in many levels, right? If we try to manage the world, it's going to cause overwhelm. It's gonna cause complete disruption internally, and which again is gonna have a trickle effect within your families and so on and so forth, right? And if we can focus on managing ourselves well, whatever that means, taking care of ourselves, right? Spending quality time together, right? Not all sitting around watching the news over and over and over and over and over again, staying with the next breaking news headline, but really, choosing how we're focusing and where we're putting our focus on, right? And the thing is if you actually choose to believe that positive and good things can come from this, what will happen is you'll start to see ways that can happen, whether it's your family getting closer as a result of this, right? Even if it's as simple as that, as just spending more quality time with your loved ones. I mean, that can be a very positive thing, can and should be, right? And then, from a bigger level, I mean, look, you're going to see problems here that, again, companies and products are going to form because of this, because it's going to shine a light on a problem that we have, and it force us to innovate. And many people will be able to take this time and create things that will help us move forward as people, as communities, and all that, right? And again, that could be you. But again, if you hyper focus on the problem and that's all you're looking at, you're going to be closed off to seeing the good that can come of the problem. And so those are just the 3 points that I wanted to talk about in this episode, right, is just this idea of preventing overwhelm from within yourself, building perseverance, right, and trusting that this will build perseverance, maturity, and growth within you, and innovation within you, and on many levels, right, on not just within you, but within your families, and with as that trickle, like this can build good, right, through this time, or we can use this time to build something good, and then also choosing just where you're focusing your energy and attention, and being cognizant of that, right? And not just defaulting to fear and panic and anxiety, but being cognizant of where you're choosing your focus is just so important as we talk about managing this as individuals. So again, hopefully that was helpful. And again, we're going to be putting out new episodes, new content each and every week, to help us go through this time together. And again, if you're wrestling with anxiety, we have our program, Overcoming Anxiety, open, where our doors are open, where we're doing weekly coaching calls with our members. You're also getting access to all our trainings, all our premium trainings, and all that as well, and a bunch of different resources. And we also have additional free resources on our site, restoredminds.com, where you can get access to assessments, and additional tools and resources to help you during this time and on your journey, if this is something that you struggle with, and is something that's really impacting your life. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. And I wish you all the best. I wish you all safety, and we'll just keep going, week by week together as we ride this thing out together. So thank you. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.